You may have clicked on this video ready to fight me, but please do not. Hi, my name is Sydney, welcome back to hell. And as per usual, before we launch in, today's video is sponsored by Foom. Now, I've really wanted to make this video for quite a long time, but never really felt like the conversation was on the table, for we've all been preoccupied elsewhere.
Hi, today would be day 500 of being a girl.
But recently, I happened upon an article titled "Conservative Influencers Are Pushing an Anti-Birth Control Message," and I thought, yes, now it feels like the right time. The article outlines several commentators and personalities, both male and female, who have made comments about the negative effects of hormonal birth control. And just to be clear, yes, there are multiple types of contraceptives. Some are hormonal and some are not, but I specifically am talking about the pill. And we'll be using a bunch of terms interchangeably, like oral contraceptive, or the pill, or the birth control pill, or hormonal birth control pill. And I'm sorry if that's at all confusing or not scientific, but it's too late to do anything about it now. The article also says that mentioning the consequences of taking the pill will instill fear in women who could otherwise benefit from this medication. It also links to another article from February by Media Matters that directly goes after the comments of Alex Clark from Poplitics, who said that the pill is poison and her objective is to get women off of it. I think one of the primary problems with this topic is that people try to paint it as a left-wing versus right-wing issue, which would explain all the angry articles I found about it. And that's largely because some groups view contraception, just as a general rule, as wrong and or sinful and or bad. There is also a fear that contraception will be next on the chopping block as far as other discussions around pregnancy have gone. But here's the thing. I don't view this as a sides of the aisle issue. And I believe that all women, regardless of where they sit on the political spectrum, should have an understanding of what they're putting in their body and what it inevitably will do to them. And most importantly, I believe in choice. If the pill is the right choice for you, then so be it. But by the same token, I also believe in making informed choices. And unfortunately for a lot of us, the informed part was left off the table when it came to doctors forcing hormonal birth control onto us as teenagers without properly explaining or explaining at all the long-term side effects and overall consequences of taking this medication. So yeah, thanks for that.
Why must you fail me so often?
So that's what we're going to talk about today. The birth control pill and the many side effects and long-term consequences of taking it. Something I just want to make note of as well is that although, as per usual, I will try to be as even-keeled about this as possible, I do have some personal experiences here that do color my opinion, and I have a vested interest in this. That also said as well, this is a massive topic. I definitely won't be able to get to everything that relates to it, so just bear that in mind that this is by no means an exhaustive video. It is just an entry into this topic, and I'm sure that there are lots of other resources out there that you can go investigate if you want more information. Also, shout out to the lads who are gonna watch this entire video, even though you don't have ovaries or a womb, and this doesn't affect you, but you just wanna be involved. You're cute. So without further ado, before you once again board my hell gondola and we sail down into the depths of sadness once again, let's hear from today's sponsor, Foom. It is true. Quitting your bad habit can be very hard. There's the suffering of cold turkey, the annoying advice from friends and family. I don't think rubbing salt on my face will help. And the moodiness. Oh, the moodiness. You are wet, sir. Get away from me. But the good news is it doesn't have to be this way, thanks to Foom. Foom is an award-nominated device designed to help with any hand-to-mouth habit. And because Foom is not a vape, it has no heating components. So instead of using harmful chemicals, it uses flavored air. Foom comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets to occupy fidgeting fingers. This is great for de-stressing and managing anxiety, rather than handling any moodiness this way. Does all your neediness make you happy? Because it makes me unhappy. And in addition to Foom's normal Yummo flavors, they have just released 3 new additions: orange vanilla, raspberry lemon, and sparkling grapefruit. Just pop these cores into your Foom, inhale, and you're good to go. So if you also want to break your bad habit, then head over to tryfoom.com/Sydney, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen. And of course, don't forget to use code Sydney for 10% off when you get a journey pack. In 2019, a psychologist called Sarah Hill gave a TED Talk about the effects of the birth control pill on the female brain. During her talk, she asked the audience how much they actually know about the pill, outside of the normal talking points about weight gain and increased risk of stroke. It's a good question that a lot of people, men and women, probably don't have a good answer to. And it's especially meaningful for ladies who have been taking this medication for years and years. What do you actually know about this thing that you take every day that stops your period and largely prevents pregnancy? As Dr. Hill points out, even asking the question feels risky to a lot of women. Thinking critically about hormonal birth control feels like a slippery slope to allowing it to be outlawed again, as it has been throughout history. But the alternative isn't much better. Women shouldn't be expected to take a medication daily while not fully comprehending what it is doing to their bodies and their brains. But that's exactly what the current rhetoric around this topic has achieved. Side note, you want to know what's even worse than all of that? Us ladies are out here trying to investigate serious issues that affect our bodies, and the clowns who are writing about it refer to us as people who menstruate. Wow, how about I take the time to show you how to menstruate out of your face when I punch it? No, but real talk, how are you gonna talk about problems that affect me as a woman when you don't believe that women are women? Please explain. Now, while we tend to think of birth control as a modern invention, the reality is that this practice isn't exactly new. Methods for controlling contraception have been recorded as early as ancient Egypt, and one could even argue it appears in the Bible. The ancient Egyptians used plants and honey and crocodile poop from stopping the little swimmies from going where they weren't wanted. While the Bible just kind of tells you to go on and pull out. Actually, it doesn't really tell you to do that. It kind of describes that as a waste. It's a waste. As time wore on and people became less interested in putting crocodile feces in their nether regions, other forms of contraception were discovered. Cycle tracking, womb veiling, and prolonged breastfeeding are well documented in the United States. In 1873, a social Puritan named Anthony Comstock, which is a bit of an ironic name there, successfully lobbied for laws that made devices used for the prevention of conception, among other things, illegal. By 1914, although women's rights advocates had began protesting anti-contraception laws, it wasn't until the massive rise in American soldiers returning home with venereal diseases during World War I that the role of birth control came back into public discussion in a meaningful way. By 1920, while anti-contraception laws were rarely enforced, they were still on the books, and it wasn't until the 1950s that a suffragette philanthropist called Catherine McCormick funded the development of the first form of the modern birth control pill. Modern birth control pharmaceuticals in the United States hit the market in the 1960s, after a long tumultuous legal process, where the Supreme Court ruled it was unconstitutional to prevent married couples from using contraceptives. The case, Griswold v. Connecticut, the one that I just referenced, would go on to become the basis for the 1972 decision for unmarried couples to also use birth control. On one hand, the sharp rise in popularity of the birth control pill promised greater innovation in the realm of reversible birth control on the whole. Women were already employing methods like condoms and diaphragms, but the creation of the pill spurred the scientific and medical communities to create even more options for women in the form of subdermal implants and improving the IUD, which, if you didn't know, stands for intrauterine device. And it looks like this cute little anchor. Here's a diagram I found on the internet. I think there's also a joke to be made here about just how many things us women have put in our bodies, but I'm not gonna go there. But your brain just did. Smut person. On the other hand, it wasn't long before pharmaceutical companies were competing for the top spot, and marketing decisions rather than scientific innovations guided the future of contraceptive products. A research paper called How the Pill Became a Lifestyle Drug, the Pharmaceutical Industry and Birth Control in the United States since 1960, outlines how messaging and advancement around and of the pill started to change. From the 1960s to the 1980s, the paper says that pharmaceutical companies advertised birth control pills expressly for the purposes of birth control, which, wow, no-brainer there. But as the pill grew in popularity, pharmaceutical companies found little incentive for investing in the innovation of new methods, and eventually shifted their marketing of existing contraceptive products away from the function of fertility control. It was the 1990s that brought about the very messaging we see today. And it was here that manufacturers began promoting oral contraceptives as lifestyle drugs. This was a term coined in 1978 that generally describes medications that improve a person's quality of life by treating less serious and sometimes cosmetic conditions. For the pill, new advertising targeted the medication's secondary effects, such as treating acne and reducing the frequency of menstruation. Big Pharma wanted to emphasize the control of pimples, moods, and period cramps, rather than the control of actual fertility. And this is the very messaging that has stuck around some 30 years later. 'Cause nobody does messaging quite like Big Pharma. Hey, give your kids Ritalin and fix their inability to sit still in a chair for 8 hours a day. A pimple at 15? Craziness. Take this pill. Simulate pregnancy. Stuck the landing. Today, you don't have to look very far at all to find women who can attest to being given the pill to deal with acne or mood swings. In fact, a birth control prescription for acne is so common that dermatology-focused sites and clinics constantly talk about it and prescribe it for this purpose alone. The same goes for a myriad of other issues that exclusively affect women. For some, the pill is treated like a magic fix, but given what it does inside the body and to the body, it can inadvertently medicalize women for life. Now, given that birth control is one of the first kind of medicalizations that is so widespread and taken for such long periods of time, one would think that the people being prescribed this would understand what it does to their bodies, right? Wrong. What a lot of us don't realize, especially those who are prescribed this medication as young teenagers who don't really understand anything at all, is that the way that the pill works is it uses synthetic hormones to mimic pregnancy. Your progesterone level stays elevated, which prevents ovulation. As far as the pill goes, there are many different types with varying amounts of estrogen and progesterone, and that's about the long and short of it without getting, considerably super duper technical, which I'm not gonna do because I'll just watch all of you glaze over and lose interest. And just to be clear, especially for the lads who are here but have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about right now, the pill cycle works by a woman taking the hormone pills for 3 weeks and the sugar pills for 1. We usually refer to this as our period, but the bleeding is from the withdrawal of hormones. If a woman decides to continue taking the hormone pills and not do a week of the sugar pills, then she theoretically won't bleed. I'm prepared to admit that I didn't know for an embarrassingly long period of time that the bleeding that happens when you're taking the sugar pills is not a period. I didn't know that, so why was this never explained to me? Now, with all of that in mind, if you take to social media and listen to the experiences of women, you find that many were placed on an oral contraceptive in their teen years or early 20s for lifestyle reasons.
My positive experience on birth control. I feel like I never hear anybody talking about this, so that's kind of why I want to talk about it. Also, not a single comment on the rollers. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to do something new. I started birth control back in August of 2020, and it completely transformed my acne.
So many women, myself included, were prescribed birth control at a very young age without properly being educated on the long-term side effects. I was put on birth control at 15 years old and was on the pill for 10 years.
The trouble is that many of these women don't feel like they were given adequate information from their doctors about what they could expect on and off the drug. And while this certainly isn't the case for everyone, there are lots of women actually who attest to the fact that the pill helped them tremendously with symptoms of polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, painful periods, mood disorders, and so on and so forth. Others report that it has impacted them long after they stopped taking it, and honestly, this is something that I can relate to a lot. Without getting into too much detail, this was more or less my experience when I came off of hormonal birth control after taking it for around 8 years. And you know, it is sad to say, but in some ways I've kind of lost hope that some of the body functions and the hormonal functions that I have that were disrupted by taking birth control will ever go back to normal. And I think the even sadder reality there is that I know I'm not alone. It's kind of ironic because in a quest to fix the issues caused by birth control, I ended up going on other medications that just screwed with my hormones further and sort of just ended up in this perpetual loop of trying to fix hormone-related issues with new hormones and just realizing that the entire thing was a circular mess. But it's fine. I'm working it out. You know, did a juice cleanse, hugged my dog, hoped my doctor was out there somewhere getting eaten by a snake. What? Anyway, jokes aside, what I am describing to you here is actually a huge problem. Women are prescribed a drug that is almost viewed, or I imagine it's viewed by some doctors, as an easy, carefree fix to a multitude of other problems. But in saying that, I just wonder how many of us are actually ever walked through the ramifications, both short-term and long-term, for taking this medication. Few, I would imagine. In 2021, Dr. Michael Lipton, a medical director of MRI services and professor of radiology, psychiatry, and behavioral sciences at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, said in an interview that it was remarkable that we didn't know more about birth control and how it works, despite how widespread and normalized it is. And to be honest with you, the bulk of the research that I looked at while writing this video made mention of this. Repeatedly, researchers would say that more investigation and study must be done to fully understand the effects of these drugs on the female body and brain. Of course, and just to be clear, we know how different contraceptives work, at least on a technical level. And there are several types of hormonal contraceptives on the market that come in pill, patch insertable, and injection form. The IUD, which contains copper, is a non-hormonal option. In 2019, Lipton and his team reported on research they'd conducted that found women taking a combination pill containing both progestin and estrogen had significantly smaller hypothalamus volume compared to women not taking these pills. The hypothalamus produces hormones and helps to regulate essential bodily functions like body temperature, mood, appetite, sex drive, sleep, and heart rate. In his own words, Dr. Lipton said, "We have found a dramatic difference in the size of the brain structures between women who were taking oral contraceptives and those who were not." He added that the team hasn't shown or proven definitively that the pill causes this, but the finding is still significant. Lipton also found that smaller hypothalamus volume was associated with feelings of anger and depressive symptoms, but stressed that this finding was preliminary. Other researchers and professors have arrived at similar conclusions, especially with regard to the effects of the pill on the brain. Dr. Sarah Hill, who I mentioned earlier, has covered this matter in great detail. Actually, I didn't realize this, but I own her book. I didn't make the connection between that, but here we are. During her 2019 TED Talk, Dr. Hill explains that the hormonal profile of the birth control pill is essentially sexual anti-venom, meaning the pill's makeup significantly affects women's libido.
That women who are on the birth control pill exhibit decreased sexual desire and decreased sexual functioning relative to their naturally cycling counterparts. And the reason for this has everything to do with the hormonal profile that's created by the birth control pill. The hormones that facilitate the sexual response in women and facilitate sexual desire are relatively high levels of estrogen and testosterone and lower levels of progesterone, right? Progesterone actually inhibits women's sexual desire. And the sex hormone profile on the birth control pill is essentially sexual anti-venom, right? It's high levels of progesterone, a sexual inhibitor, right? And relatively low levels of estrogen and testosterone. And indeed, there's a lot of research indicating that women tend to have diminished libido on the birth control pill.
Which is kind of ironic when you consider the fact that a large portion of women are taking birth control for the purposes of preventing pregnancy, and yet they don't want to have sex, which sort of feels like it defeats the purpose. Although, if I'm thinking about it critically, I guess not, because if she doesn't want to have sex, then she can't get pregnant. Science. Dr. Hill goes on to add that a woman's level of estrogen determines how much testosterone she wants in her partner.
Right, and this is also something that's influenced by the levels of sex hormones that are created by the birth control pill. Right, so we know now from decades of research that women's own levels of estrogen predict the amount of testosterone that they prefer in their partners. In other words, the sex hormone estrogen increases women's attunement to cues that have historically been linked to testosterone levels in men. This graph that you're looking at here is showing how women's own levels of estrogen predict testosterone preference. And what you can see from this is that estrogen loves testosterone. Right? So women, when they have relatively high levels of estrogen, are really cued into facial cues that are associated with masculinity, and this changes their preferences over the course of the cycle. Now, given that the birth control pill keeps levels of estrogen very low, we can make the prediction that women who are on the birth control pill should prefer as partners men who have fewer cues associated with testosterone preference. Right? And that's exactly what we find. So research finds now that women who are on the birth control pill prefer partners with less masculine faces than do their naturally cycling peers. And this is something that is found both when women are identifying men that they would like to have as short-term sexual partners, and also the people that they'd like to have as long-term romantic partners. Right? The research has also found that pill-taking women are actually choosing as partners men with less masculine faces relative to naturally cycling women. So they've done studies where they've brought in the partners of women who chose their partner, whether they were on or off of the birth control pill, took photographs of their faces, created facial composites, and they were able to actually look at the proportion of testosterone markers on the faces of men. And they found out that the pill-taking women, indeed, were choosing as partners men with fewer testosterone markers in their faces. Right? So the birth control pill might be changing the face of mate preferences.
Funnily enough, and once again on a personal level, when I was doing research to come off of birth control, I read a whole heap of stuff that said that it messes with pheromones and all sorts of things related to attraction. It actually reminds me of this opinion piece that I read recently that said that if you're not attracted to the way that your man smells, including his sweat, then he's maybe not the guy for you. But on a serious note, have you ever smelled men? A man? Like any place that men typically congregate together, sometimes without clothes on, like in a locker room. I don't know what you're doing in there, but I don't like the smell of it. It's why we insist on getting you cologne at any gift-giving occasion.
This is one study of many that looked at this phenomenon. It focused specifically on masculine facial features. Without hormonal birth control, women are attracted to men with different smells. Yep, you got it, pheromones. These are associated with masculine features and higher testosterone levels. And on hormonal birth control, they're attracted to men that are more similar to them, with lower testosterone levels, more feminine features, and they're typically regarded as caretakers. There are more studies that also show that taking birth control changes which men you attract as well.
The last thing that I want to make note of here is that Dr. Hill said that there is a correlation between the effect of the birth control pill and cortisol levels. She says that women who are taking this medication exhibit a blunted or absent cortisol response to stress. Cortisol, as Dr. Hill explains, is part of the way that the body copes with stress.
But cortisol isn't what causes stress. Life is what causes stress. Right? Cortisol is actually part of the way that our body helps cope with stress. It dumps fat and sugar into our bloodstream so we can make a fast getaway, and it primes our brain for learning and memory, so that way if we encounter a similar situation in the future, we'll be better able to cope with it. Right? And because of this, when we're feeling stressed out, our body releases cortisol, unless you're on the birth control pill. So there's several decades of research now that shows that women who are on the birth control pill exhibit a blunted or altogether absent cortisol response to stress. Right? And this is something that's potentially really important, not only because this is a type of profile that we tend to see in people who've undergone trauma or have PTSD, but also because it can cause structural changes in the brain, decrease people's ability to cope with stress, cause problems with emotional regulation, and impair learning and memory. And there's some research now coming out about the birth control pill in each one of these processes that suggests that we might be seeing just these patterns in women who are on the birth control pill.
So to summarize all of this, what Dr. Hill is essentially saying is that the birth control pill affects the overall functioning of a woman's brain. It impacts who she views as a potential partner, it dramatically affects her libido, and it wholly affects cortisol in her body, leading to symptoms that look like PTSD, creating structural changes in the brain, and impairing emotional responses, learning, and memory. Society chalks a lot of this up to women being crazy, or emotional, or even just generally unhinged. But it seems few people, few women more importantly, stop to think that the issues they face every day, be it weight gain, moodiness, irritability, brain fog, are the result of a little pill that they take every day. So we're not crazy, we're just medicated. so that men can have casual sex with us. Oh, that joke felt a little bitter. Join us. On a serious note, one of the biggest things that I noticed when I was coming off the pill was the brain fog lifting, for lack of a better way of describing it. It was like I could finally think again clearly, and while I was on the pill, I was perpetually mad. Nowadays, I'm only mad when I get sat on by fat people on airplanes. Or shouted at by literal feminists. Now, while perusing the old social media, I noticed that there was a lot of discussion, particularly on YouTube and TikTok, about birth control. And I noticed again and again videos where young women made the connection between being happy pre-birth control and emotionally unstable while taking the medication. And as crazy as that might sound on the surface, this experience actually makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, several studies have positively associated self-deletion with hormonal contraception, with adolescent women experiencing the highest relative risk. On a similar note, especially in young adolescents, it has been linked to the subsequent use of medication for depression and a first diagnosis of depression.
But when we're talking about young girls as 19 and younger, you still have a lot of brain development that's going on. And when you are experiencing post-pubertal brain development, all of that remodeling that goes on after puberty is something that's coordinated by your sex hormones. The research that has been done is beginning to point fingers at a possible link between adolescent birth control pill use and then a greater risk of developing major depressive disorder across your lifetime, even after you're off of hormonal birth control. Wow. And that's pretty scary.
One study of over 1 million Danish women concluded that depression is a potential adverse effect of hormonal contraceptive use. But it should be noted that others have attempted to discredit parts of this study by suggesting that it does not account for life changes, making it hard to know whether it is actually hormonal birth control driving that depressive risk. So there's that. The reality here is that one pill, innocently taken to deal with acne, may inadvertently lead to another pill to deal with worsening depression. And the woman, the patient, has absolutely no idea how these two things are related. And this just feels like the entire business model of Big Pharma. Another thing I noticed on social media is that some female doctors and naturopathic practitioners have started getting very vocal about the various vitamins that the pill depletes in the body. They claim that these are the same vitamins which coincide with symptoms of depression and other emotional issues.
Girls who are on the pill, please listen. Okay, so my nutrition professor just taught us that if you're on the pill, it depletes all of your body's natural B vitamins, which causes symptoms of depression, fatigue, and all these other things. Like so, and basically your medical doctor is supposed to recommend that you take a B complex vitamin, but they never do.
So with all of that said, I think it is important once again to note that the negative symptoms of taking the pill are no joke. A 2019 article expressed that the use of the birth control pill is declining as women question its mental health side effects. It outlines a 2013 study where almost 63% of women reported they stopped taking the pill because of its side effects. Side effects which, just by the way, caused a hormonal birth control trial for men to be shelved. Yep, in 2016, the male version of hormonal birth control shots were stopped after trial subjects reported less severe symptoms of the test drug. These are many of the same symptoms women have been coping with since the 1960s. These side effects include acne, mood swings, one man developed severe depression, and another one tried to self-delete. And because of this, they cut the study short. By comparison, women began reporting a sharp increase in severe medical conditions within 2 years of the original pill being released, and have continued to report these side effects without any real concern from manufacturers, doctors, or even the general medical community. Some studies have connected the pill to a 20% increase in breast cancer risk, and just to be clear here, there are studies that do not make that correlation, but I wanted to make note of both anyway. The pill has also been connected to a dramatic increase in blood clot risk, stroke risk, lupus, and as I mentioned, depression and self-deletion. And yet, women are still prescribed prescribed this without issue, and women are still expected to take it or else they are deemed sexually irresponsible. Now, on that very positive, happy note, I want to round things off with a few final thoughts. Firstly, as much as I am very critical of the medical industry when it comes to this particular topic, I do want to stress and highlight that personal responsibility is a thing and will always be a thing. When you take a medication, especially as an adult, it is up to you in large parts to educate yourself about the potential effects of that medication. Obviously, when it comes to this issue, it's a little more complicated because the information that we have discussed even in this video is quite hard to come by, and as these researchers and doctors and professors and whatnot have explained already, there is very little information and very little research that's been done into the pill itself. So I come back to just generally being very critical of the medical community. Secondly, and I want to be very clear about this, I am all about choice, and I have no inherent problem with individuals using birth control and taking it upon themselves to determine what works best for them. What I do have a problem with, on the other hand, is this accelerating trend of inadvertently creating lifelong big pharma customers by getting people hooked on lifestyle drugs, when we don't have any comprehension of the long-term effects of those drugs. And you can apply that to all sorts of things, whether it be these new transgender treatments and surgeries, or even this new wave of weight loss injections that seem to be all the rage right now. Birth control can be great for some people. And like I mentioned previously, it does help with some conditions in some people, like polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, mood disorders, and even acne. But for others, me included, the permanent changes that it has made to our bodies has led to lifelong issues, more medications, and very few resources to understand what happened. In the end, all I'm saying is that when it comes to big pharma, I think we need to be considerably more cognizant of the fact that we don't know everything, but neither do they. Now, before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder to check out Foom using the link in the description. When you do, you can check out their 3 brand new flavors which smell and taste pretty dang great, and you can get a discount using my code Sydney. Now, I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Are you a woman who has been on birth control and can totally relate to what I am saying here? Are you someone who has had actually a really positive experience and a lot of this to you is totally foreign? Are you on the fence about the whole issue? Or are you somebody who's never taken it because you thought that it would lead to a lot of this? What do you make of the big pharma element to all of this? The lack of innovation, the lack of research that's gone into this topic? And if you're a man who's watching, what do you think of this as an outsider that this kind of doesn't really super affect on a physiological level? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you are new here or you're returning and you liked this video and you want to see more of them, hit the thumbs up button, or better yet, subscribe. Feel free to leave me a comment. I do read the majority of them, if not all of them, and I do take on board your suggestions for future videos, so absolutely let me know. And otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Stay safe and well. I'll see you in the next video.